Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 121. Today we're installing another Sigenergy system. This one is the staple 10 kilowatt inverter with 16 kilowatt hours of storage and a gateway. Up on the roof we've got our bifacial panels with our optimisers, and we have also got the usual bird guard, Vandervolt mounting and all the rest of that good stuff. Just to say at the start of this video, if you're a customer looking for an install in your own home, there'll be a link in the description where you can go off and get in touch with us. We work all over the UK now. This particular project was 200 or 300 miles from our HQ, and a huge thanks to our customers here. They've looked after us so well with drinks and snacks, sandwiches all through the course of this project. We really do get spoiled rotten, and we are very, very grateful to you, and we hope you're happy with what we've delivered in your home. This is still currently a work in progress. The guys are still up on the roof grinding out tiles, fitting all of the mounting kit up there. We have got the Sigenergy store online and working with the gateway. These typically only take half a day or so to get set up, wired and working, so we're well on the way with that. The next kind of steps are to finish off the cabling down from the roof into this garage area, and obviously the panels up on the roof. But in this particular video I want to focus in on the app side of things and how sort of the MPPTs and design works, because I've had a few questions from consumers who are looking at this with some questions and queries. In fact, the customer on this project asked about the string layout and configuration at the proposal stage because they weren't sure how those things work, and sometimes as installers we take that knowledge for granted, and I thought in this video we'll really focus on that. So let's get on with it and jump into the rest of the video. So one of the things I get asked a fair bit is around the commission and also the panel layout to the MPPTs. So as I said, we're going to focus in on this one in the course of this video, and I'm actually doing the commission at the moment. So you'll see you use a smartphone, and basically you insert all the customer's details in step one, so I've skipped past that, and then it runs through to a software update of all the devices that are in the system. So you can see we've got our gateway, we've got our Sigenergy store and a couple of batteries. And this typically takes 2 to 5 minutes depending on your connectivity. So here we're relying on the customer's Wi-Fi, but it is going pretty quickly, and that update will be done in a minute or two. You start the commission by using the QR codes on the side. So it's a case of open the app, press the plus button to create a new system, pop all your customer details in, connect it onto the internet if you're using LAN, Wi-Fi, cellular backup, all of that good stuff. Your cabling inside here, and I've left this open so we can show you a little bit better than I have on some recent videos. We've got our MPPTs, so these are the red and white wires. Basically a pair of these represent a string. Each will accept an input of between, well, it's in terms of generation it's between 60 and just under 600 volts, but the actual VOC that you need to try and get within, which is the voltage the panels output when they're not generating, is between 100 and 600. Now you do need to factor in the different temperatures for that, so in especially cold days that temperature affects the panel voltages, so you can see a higher voltage when it's colder. So you need to remember not to take it to the 600 just at standard test conditions, because on certain cold days, typically in March, April, maybe late October, you'll see that voltage above there and the system will shut down. So in this case we're using 3 of the MPPTs. We've got an array on an east elevation, and that's 6 panels, so they are what they are. They're coming into the one MPPT, and then we've got an array on the other side of 16 panels, which is beyond the MPPT's voltage for the panels we've selected. So we need to split that up into 2 arrays basically, so it becomes 2 strings of 8. Now with the panels we're using from Trina, the voltage on those at VOC standard test conditions is 52 volts. So if we were to use 16 of those, simple maths tells you you're well over 600, and that's because every panel's voltage adds up together when they're in series. So we need to make sure we cover that off and that we're not over peaking or under supplying these MPPTs, because either of those things will stop that array from generating. We've also got our main power cable in here, which is the AC cable. This is what connects power from and to the inverter into the electrical system. So when it's supplying the house, it will take that power off and pop it into the gateway, and when it's charging it comes back through that cable there as well. We've also got a comms cable which allows it to speak with the gateway, and you can use that for connectivity to the internet as well. And we've also got our 4G dongle here that allows backup comms if the local telephone exchange has gone down. There's still maybe some redundancy to control the system if the mobile phone network remains connected. And then we've got our Wi-Fi dongle or antenna just in there as well. So we'll maybe spin back to a computer screen and I'll show you the design of itself, and we can have a little look at some of those MPPT values because I think that's quite interesting. These are the DC isolators which show the string configuration. So we've got the red and white again, which is a string, a string, a string, a string, and we always put the 4 into the isolators and wire them into the inverter, just so if anybody is ever going to add another string, it's easy to do without having to mess about with the inverter itself. But only these 3 are going to be used, and that one will be redundant. We've not brought our input cables off the roof into this yet, but it's the same cable type, so it's PV Ultra, that drops down and then allows connectivity into the system with the sunshine. Obviously we've not finished with these glands, and there isn't even a gland in there, so don't hate on that, it is just work in progress for the moment. And yeah, you can kind of get a feel for the system when you kind of see it and understand what all of these cables are doing. I appreciate as consumers, and it's lots of you guys and girls who've asked these questions, you may be not really sure, and the app also does provide a lot of detail. So I'm going to use one of my customers that we're allowed to do that with, and that's Matthew, who is our supervisor. We can have a look at his system and play around with the app and see exactly what it does. You can see that update's now finished. It's just doing a reboot. It waits to have the Sigenergy back on the internet, talking to the app, and then it allows you to proceed with the rest of your commission, where you can insert your import and export values. So you can limit this for both import and export, and it's G100 compliant. So you know that if you've got a limitation from the DNO in either way, you can set that in the app. You can also set your minimum battery reserve you want to hold on to. The maximum, you can set up the light configuration as well, all through the initial setup. So you need to make sure you follow the steps. It takes you through it step by step. You can see there it's done that now, so we can confirm it, move on to the next bit, and this is where we start putting in our G99s and things and all those values I was just mentioning. So I'll pop you down while I do that. It's not that exciting. It takes a couple of minutes, and then we'll maybe zoom back and have a look at the desktop recording of this system to see what I was talking about with the panel voltages, and also a little look at the app as well. And the other questions sort of revolve around the gateways, not so much in how they function with the off-grid, but with the smart port. And that can be used for a whole range of things. You can use it for like diesel backup generators, air conditioning units, heat pumps, EV chargers, other PV systems, and that's configurable in the app as well to tell the system what that is. Your inverter ports you can use for EV chargers if you want. It still goes through the consumption of the backup port, and as long as you use the Sigenergy EV charger, it would still display in the app as EV charging as well. If you're using a third-party EV charger, it would just see it as normal house loads. Or you can have 3 full stacks as well through there if you want. It's unlikely in a residential setting, but the option's there, and the batteries will go 6 deep each stack. So you could have 18 battery modules on that system. And you've got your SPD here, which is looking at transient voltages coming in. Now I'm going to go quiet and you can listen to the contactor. This one's in a garage, so the noise of it doesn't really matter, but it is something to consider if you're popping these in an area near where people sleep. They do hum. The new gateways are coming without these contactors, so they will be absolutely silent. But for the minute, this is what we've got available, and all contactors hum. It is perfectly normal. We've been asked a couple of times after projects, should this thing be humming, and it's just what they do. So this is what they sound like. And it is just a very sort of dull hum. If I go back over here, you can still hear it. It is audible. It's nothing like an extractor fan or anything, but it's there. Now with this one, we've gone with our cables out on the open because we're going up into this cabinet here with the customer's consumer unit and electricity meter in. We pop those up the side into this cabinet. It was just the neatest way of doing it. If we used trunking, we ended up with it looking a little bit messy down the side. So we've gone for this on this one. We've shown different ways of doing these. They could do with having some rear entry on these gateways as well, to be honest, with some glands on the rear of them would help massively with keeping things neat. But again, this is how they come from the manufacturer with the glands on the bottom. So we are kind of working with what we're working with. We've got our AC isolator on here, and that's a 63 amp rated one from Proteus, and that is looking after the 10 kilowatt inverter. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that is a 10 kilowatt inverter on there. The 8 kilowatt inverter has 3 MPPTs in it, and 6 and under just have 2. The 10 kilowatt and 12 kilowatt have 4 MPPTs in them, so you can use 4 strings between 100 600 volts. going into your inverters should you wish. We always are now leaving these cables nice and long, so you can see a bit of a coil sticking out there, and that is for if these stacks grow. You may need the cables longer on the inverter as it climbs ever higher, and it saves having to rewire that in the future. And again, we've left space above this one, so if anybody wants to, they can take that right up to the ceiling should they ever wish. But I don't think there's any plans for that with this particular customer. The 16 kilowatt hours is plenty for most domestic consumers, and they'll be able to make full use of that system with that power for many, many years to come. So we're back at a one-to-one training here, which is another initiative that I'm getting off the ground separate to the day job. However, we do have a selection of sector leading panels here for the trainees to come in and use, and we fit these on our projects as well. They have different strengths and weaknesses, and they are all the same size. So I often get asked about using some of these 2 meter plus panels, and on commercial roofs like we've got above us here, they very much come into play because you don't have a steep pitch to work with. It's easier to get the panels up onto the roofs. But I just think at that size on a domestic pitched roof, they really do become quite cumbersome to move around, and we prefer this footprint. So these three options here, we've got a couple of bifacials, one from Trina, one from JA Solar, and then we've got these ICO NeoStar 2S's as well. They're all 440 to 450 watt in terms of their output. We're not really looking at that so much in this segment of the video. We're looking at the voltages and the currents that these panels can produce and how that can impact into our string design based on the inverters that we're using. So as I've said with the Sigenergy inverters, the MPPT range is from 60 volts up to 600 volts. It does vary based on the VOC voltage to the actual generating voltage. The safe window is down to 80 volts whilst generating, I believe up to 550 volts while generating, but check into the data sheet on that. Now, if you're using the software, and we'll look a little bit at that in this video as well, we use Open Solar, which is a really good option. It's not paid or sponsored. We do find that it is really good. That can highlight some of the issues with your voltages and your currents as well, based on your string design. So just to give a basic concept to you, if you're a consumer and you don't understand how all of this plays out, as we string these panels together, the voltages that they produce as an individual panel are added onto each other. So if you've got one panel where the Trina is 52 volts, for example, if you have 10 of those, it becomes 520 volts for easy maths. Now the current on those is consistent all the way through, so if it's outputting 10 amps, say, if you've got one panel or 10, it is still 10 amps. That is when they are in series. Now some arrays you can parallel up, so you could have an array that's got 10 panels at 10 amps and another one that's got 10 panels at 10 amps. If you then combine those, the current will double whilst the voltage of the arrays themselves will stay the same. So again, in simple maths, if we just imagine two panels being paralleled up, so we've got our 52 volt Trina panel, if we connect that in parallel rather than in series, you wouldn't really do this in the real world, but the voltage would stay the same and the 10 amp current would double. So again, you need to look at the maximum current that your inverter can handle. So lots of them are around sort of 15, 20 amps-ish, and that's the same for your tigo optimizers as well. You need to make sure that if you are doing some paralleling of your arrays and strings, that you're not over peaking the current as well, because that can run you into some problems. And also with your isolators, so on the DC side, you need to make sure that they are rated for both the voltage and the current. There's a huge range out there. We use IMO, starting at 16 amps, and they go all the way up into the hundreds of amps. So you need to be really careful in your selectivity around your switchgear and isolators, as well as the actual panels themselves. So we'll go in a little bit closer and have a look at these on the datasheet labels, but I just thought I'd show you them from afar in comparison. So if I come over here, you can see this one is the Trina, this one is the JA Solar, and this one is the ICO. And now these are the back sides of the bifacial panels, and you can see the difference in the technologies from the Trina and the JA Solars in the way the glass is laid out. So the glass spacings on these Trinas is much narrower than on the JA Solar, and the panel wiring and layout as well also looks different. So they're not the same. I'll spin them around and we can have a little look at how the fronts appear as well. Actually, we'll look at the data sheet labels first, because then I won't have to turn them back around. So I'll bring you in a little bit close to begin with. So we'll start with the Trina here, and this one has got
a VOC of 52.2 volts. You can see that there, and its current is 10.67 amps. Now, if you look above that, it gives you the actual figure in terms of when it's generating. So it drops down to 44 volts and 10 amps. There's a subtle difference there, and they're based on the standard test conditions, giving you the VOC and ISC values, which is the higher of those figures. That's basically like laboratory conditions, 1000 lumens, 25 degrees Celsius. You can see on the back of here, they have the connectors laid across, as you would normally see, to wire out for your fly leads. And these are your kind of positive and negative connectors to the solar panel strings. So basically this would connect into one panel on that side, and this would connect into your panel leading off the other way. So your string of panels, you can sort of see it here. That one connects to that one would connect to that one. Obviously the same brand, but you get the idea there. So that's the datasheet information on the back of the Trina. If we look here at the JA Solar, it's different but sort of the same. So this one has got a VOC of 40 volts, which is much lower, and the current on it jumps up to 14.4 volts. So you can see there's high current, low voltage. And then when it's in generating conditions, so your VMP and IMP, they drop down to 32 volts-ish and 13 amps. So a little subtle difference there in those panels. We'll have a little look at the ICO as well. I will just turn that one around so we can do that all at once. So you'll see with the ICO straight away the difference is it's just single-sided, so you've got your white plastic back sheet, and typically the data sheet is upside down, so I'll have to hold you upside down and get you lined up with it. Hopefully this is going to work. But you can see there, this one has a voltage in terms of its VOC of, if I can find it, 41 volts. And that drops down to 36, I believe, reading that upside down for its VMP. And you can see the current is around 14 amps or so again. So that's the ICO Neostar 2. Spin you back around. So that's the back side of all these panels. I'm just going to flip them all around now so we can look at the differences on the front of them as well, so you can see the different shades close together. So you can see from the top side, they do all look a little bit different. There's a different layout in the cells and the space in between them, and the ICO one over here looks what I would say a slightly bluer colour, but also more of a solid panel, so there's none of the lines through it that you can see, certainly from a distance anyway. So some people prefer that kind of look because you haven't got all the little lines that you can see in these ones. It is just like a black panel, but equally it's a very subtle hint of blue in there that you don't notice in these panels quite so much. I think it's still there, but the lines probably break it up to make it look like it isn't, if that makes any sense. My own personal preference, the one that I like the look of the best from the top surface, and they're all an all black panel at the end of the day, but it is the Trina. I do think that looks a little bit nicer, but personal taste on that. We'll go in a little bit closer and you can maybe see the difference, because the ones that are kind of like each other are these JA Solar and the Trina ones. If we go across the join, you can see what I mean. So the space in here is much narrower, and this is see-through glass on the gaps, by the way. And then over on the JA Solar, you can see that gap between what I'm calling the cells is a little bit wider. So there is a subtle difference there. It's just the way the panels are wired up with the silicon and how all of that works in the clever technology that these panel manufacturers innovate. I don't really understand it, but they do look slightly different. On the underside of these, I actually prefer the way the JA Solar one looks, but I mean, no one's ever looking at that unless it's a ground mount kit, so it's kind of an irrelevance, but I just think it looks a bit shinier and a bit nicer. With these from ICO, the panel cells, they are just a solid colour, and you just still have the lines between, but again, they just look like a glass line. And excuse the fingerprints on these, they have been handled in the training space without gloves a few times, so they're carrying a few more fingerprints than you'd otherwise see out in the real world, and I've just been spinning them around with my bare hands as well. But yeah, that's kind of the panels and the subtle differences you can see with that. And we'll have a look at the software and how that can play out in your string sizing and arrangement. In very, very short summaries for your typical residential system where you've got the Trina that's 52 volts here and you're kind of working under a 600 volt limit, you're really only going to get 10 of those into a string, just so you can allow a safe margin for those cool temperatures, which will push those voltages higher. Remember, those figures are based on standard test conditions. They will move about when it's cooler and brighter. The JA has been a lower voltage of around 40 volts. You could string those up a little bit higher to maybe 13, 14 panels as just a rough guess, which can free up some space for the MPPTs to do some other generations. So if you've got a large array, for example, of maybe 30 panels that you don't want to use 3 MPPTs for with the Trinas, you could maybe squeeze them into 2 somehow with the JAs. And the same with the ICOs as well. The other reason we've started to use bifacial panels, just to mention, because we get asked this a fair old amount of time, is they cost the same as a single-sided panel. And while we're on roof, the increased generation you're going to get is negligible. You're in the single-digit percentages of difference over a year, I'm sure, but the benefit is still there. And they tend to start generating earlier on in the day because they'll start outputting voltage a little bit higher, a little bit quicker, due to the reflected element of generation as well. Some of the more modern panels, so the 3S from ICO, are really good at that as well. And there's HTG, I think it is, technology now with a new panel type. These are all N types, where they will generate better in lower light conditions, which is great for us over in the UK. So there was loads of different options and innovations out there all the time. These all sit sort of between 22 to 24% efficiency, which is a much of a muchness overall. And like I say, they're all 440, 450 watt panels, and they're all pretty much going to give you the same output over the course of a year within maybe 10 or 20 units of electricity. You know, you're not talking mega differences. In terms of the cost, the ICO is significantly more expensive than the JA or the Trina. The Trina is the lower cost option, ever so slightly cheaper than the JA Solar, but there's not a lot in it. So I thought we'd have a little look at the app, and this is the installer facing app. So it'll look a little bit different to yours as the consumer, but much of it is the same, certainly the same information and the way you can kind of navigate around bits of it. So bear with me. I might have to blur bits of this out. It is a customer facing install. This one I've selected because they've got quite a bit of kit in there and there's some good generation, so you'll be able to really explore how this all works. But you can see on the main screen there, we've kind of got a picture of a house. Now, if you use a commercial premises, it displays as that. We can see we've got some solar on the roof, we've got an EV charger, we've got a gateway and the battery system. Now, if you click on different aspects of this, it'll kind of open it up and expand on it. So we can go in and see there's an inverter, the batteries, the percentage and health of them. If we click on the PV panels, it will open up the actual generation. So you can see here what that graph's been doing through the course of the day. And we've labeled these as front roof, back roof and garage. So you can kind of delve into that and see which each individual bit has been doing. You can also open up some real-time information, and that will give you your production for the day, instantaneous power, the voltages, the currents, and all those things. So if you think there's an issue in there, you can really delve into the data and get to the nitty-gritty of what is actually going on. So that's a useful bit of insight and information in there. And again, you can scroll down and see the total panel capacity and the models and such that you have got. The EV charger is in there as well, so you can click onto that and go in and have a look at what the EV charger's doing and been doing, see the power that it's discharged, change your schedule, and all of that good stuff as well. And you can see at the minute, this is in PV surplus charging state. So when we get to the point of the battery's been full and the house load's been sustained by the PV, that power can be sent to the electric vehicle that's on charge. It's a choice by the customer. Some people do prefer to do that regardless of the fact that you can get paid 15 pence for your export on some tariffs and buy it in for 7 or 8p overnight. This particular customer is on Octopus Agile, so it very much is usually advantageous to pop that solar PV into the vehicle if the export payments aren't where you need them to be. As we scroll down, you can see what is the Sparky diagram. I'm probably saying that wrong, and this is the real game changer that the Sigenergy app integrated the last few months, and it really shows traceability of every single drop of power. So you can see today, if I click on the solar, we have popped 6.38 kilowatt hours into the battery, and the load has consumed 6.85, and a tiny little portion has gone to the grid. We often get asked about that. That really is just so the system can sort of stay in sync. There has to be a flow of power to and from the grid so it can maintain a matched frequency and voltage with the grid of things, if it doesn't do that, it's really hard for these systems to reference. So you always do get a little bit of power flow in either direction to the other. You can see if we click on the battery, we've provided 5.43 kilowatt hours of power to the house loads and a little bit of power out to the grid. And again, that'll probably be when the system's been running from battery power overnight just to remain in sync. And again, we can see from the grid, we've had a little bit of power go towards the house loads, and that is probably overnight when the battery's dropped below its minimum SOC level. The customer has a reserve set, and then it started to consume a bit of power from the grid. So you get all of that insight in there. If we go into the day prior, there's been a bit more generation. In fact, we'll try and find a day where we've had a good chunk of some sunshine, because it's not been especially sunny the last few days. So you can see here we've had a day where we've got 56 kilowatt hours, so a bit more power, and that will show you then going to the battery, going to the house load, going to the EV charge point, and then going out to the grid as well. And all of that data can be displayed in these graphs, and you can toggle bits on and off. So if you want to turn off the EV charger from the graph and just see what you exported to the grid, for example, or you want to see what your battery charged, you can do. If we want to look at what the PV system has produced in and of itself, we can do that as well. And we can see what's been going on in terms of the energy costs. So you can insert your tariffs, and it will show you kind of what money you're saving as well, which is really useful to kind of track your spend in the Sigenergy app. So there's absolutely tons of detail in there. You can do this merged view if you want, which will show you your solar production. And if you would like, you can select other options on this scale, and that then will impact down into the graph below. So it will kind of change its display based on what you're tapping on the Sigenergy diagram. So that is that in a nutshell, and all of that data is trackable and traceable going back months and years. So if we want to, we can change from a day view to the year so far, and you can see this customer's generated 1.35 megawatt hours of solar PV already, and you can see that they've done that starting in July. So in July they did 555.63 kilowatt hours, and in August they have done 807, and we've not quite finished August yet. It's the 21st of August today. So some good numbers from this system already, which is nice to see. And again, as we scroll down, all of that data grows. You can see the energy values, and this will just build and build as the customer uses the system. And if we want, we can go and have a look at a particular month. So say we want to look at August, you can really delve into that data, see where your power went and on what days. And you can see on some of these days, we've kind of had 60 kilowatt hours of production, which is nice, and where that power's been going and what that's been doing. If we have a look back, we can scroll into July, we can see where our peaks were, again, up to 60 kilowatt hours of generation, which are really, really nice numbers. And the customer's making good use of it, which is nice to see. Now, you can go into the kind of settings of things, and that's where you can change your operating mode. So if you want, you can use the AI functions. You can be in a time-based control. So if you've got a cheap rate tariff overnight between sort of 12:30 and 5:30 in the morning, you can set to use that, charge your battery in that window, and then go in self-consumption mode in the hours outside of that. You can turn on all your preheating, the priority discharging mode. So if you want to do the ordering where the power goes, then you can do that as well. And there's different ways you can set that up with the EV charger in the game as well. So if you want to have the EV charger take priority over the battery storage, you can make those adjustments. You can do any peak shaving and all those good things in there as well. All of your integration in terms of why the card management is set up. So if you want to set up payments from the EV charger, you can do that as well. You can also adjust the lighting. So these are the indicator settings, and this is just set. We usually set them to show charging and discharging for both the front and the LED strips, but you can do these other cool things as well. Christmas tree lights been a bit of a novelty feature that will work up on there too. If you want to raise any tickets, you can do that as well, which is super handy. And then we have the AI function. So if you want to ask the AI chatbot, what is my production from yesterday, We'll see what it comes up with. So you can ask these kind of questions as the consumer on the other side of your app as well, and you can see it's answered that question for me. So anything you want to say to it, so if you want to ask it, how do I change the settings to charge my battery overnight between 2 and 3 in the morning? The AI function can help you do that. It's a really useful feature inside the Sigenergy app. There is loads more functions in there. Primarily, it's just a way of controlling energy flow. So if you've got the full ecosystem with the EV chargers, the batteries, the gateways, the inverters, you really do have control of what is going to go where and when. And that is really useful with the tariffs. Also, the AI function has an integration with the tariff mapping. So while the Sigenergy system at the moment isn't directly integrated with Octopus Intelligent, for example, you can use the AI functions where it will do that. So if you know you've got a cheap charging window, for example, that isn't in a normal overnight slot, if you use the AI function, it can map to that and get you the best value through it. So that's the app. I hope that was useful, having a little run through that for you. Okay, so I thought I'd pop Open Solar up, and this is on our space here at A1-to-1 Training. And I've just mapped some panels on here already, and we're going to have a little play around and put some different options on there too. If we look at the panels I've got selected, these are the ones from Trina Solar, and you can see you can search through the whole repertoire of panels that they have on this website to choose whichever ones you like. If we click on the actual array here, you can see we've got it set to a 20-degree slope, which isn't actually correct. It's much shallower than that, so we'll change it to 10. And then if we go on to our inverter, you can see we've selected a 25 kilowatt Sigenergy inverter, and we've strung these up a little bit already. Now, the 25 kilowatt triple pole Sigenergy inverter will allow a bigger MPPT voltage range than the single phase ones you're familiar with us showing on the channel. So if we click on the MPPT here, you can see that will allow a DC input voltage range from 160 to 1100 volts. And that is quite a wide range. And that's the nature of your three-phase systems. Generally speaking, you have more PV input and you need bigger MPPT ranges to sort of cover that off. And you can see here the values moving around. If we look at the bottom with the VOC at roughly -8 degrees Celsius, that string will produce over 1000 volts. But when it's really warm at 60 degrees Celsius, it drops down to 860 volts. So there's a significant impact in terms of temperature with these panels. Now I'm going to swap the inverter to a normal single phase one, just because I think that will map a bit more closely to the sort of content we share on the channel more often. So if we choose the Sigenstore 12 kilowatt range inverter, you can see already it's popping up some issues with the MPPTs and sizes. So if we click on here now, we can see we've got a voltage range of 50 to 600 volts. And that is telling us we are way over both for our lower temperatures and also the warmer ones. So we're going to restring all of these. Let's delete the strings and we'll start again. So if we pop our 4 MPPTs on and we go for one string, let's start off by just dragging across them here. If we get up to 10 panels, we're all good with 10. It's happy with that. If we click on our MPPT, you can see here, even in cool temperatures, we're still under that limit. Now, if I add an 11th panel on, I think that should swing us over. Yes, it has done. So it's now not happy at those cooler temperatures. So in warmer weather, we'd be fine and that generation would run. But on really, really cold days where it's bright and sunny, you might see your MPPT shut down because the voltage goes over limits. So you need to be really careful with that. So that's kind of limiting us there to just the 10 panels. So if we map the rest of this system, as long as we keep to 10 panels, we'll be fine. And that will just play out as true for this little 40 panel array we've got on here. So they are all now mapped into the system and they'll all generate accordingly. Now, if we want, we can go and add some more panels. So if we swing our panels over from the Trinas and we'll choose some JA Solars. In fact, just let me check the volume of panels I've got in there. Oops, wrong button. Isn't changed. So yeah, we'll keep those and we'll add some more new ones in. So if we drop the drop down, go back to there and we can choose them. They should pop up into the list because I had some on a design the other day, so we'll just wait for that to come up. So we've got our ICOs, there we go. So we've got some GA solar, 450 bifacials. Let's pop a few of those on. So we'll stick another big row on and see how that impacts stuff. So again, drag them all the way across. In fact, we need to spin those around. Stick them over this way first. Roughly line them up. Shove them over here. This is testing my mouse control skills. We'll try and get them lined up as best we can. And again, because we've got this big roof space, we can actually play around with the layout on these anyway. We'll just pop them in there for now. I could type the value in of the orientation, that would be easier, but I'm determined now. Determined to do it with a mouse. There we go. Close enough. So we've got those. In fact, I've done them the wrong way around after all. So I don't know what I was doing there. They want to be this way around. So they were the right way around to start with. That was dumb. There we go. Everyone makes mistakes. So we've got those on there. We'll swing the array into a bigger size. So pop another row on. Why not? Whoops. And take those ones out. Right. So now we have got some more panels in there. Now our inverter's already maxed out because of these Trina panels that were there, so we'll get rid of those, even though they swapped them to JA Solars in the design. We'll just get rid of them and start again. So now if we go back to our inverter and we get rid of all the strings and we start again, let's see what happens if we put a load of panels in. So we'll go up to, let's try 13. So bearing in mind we could only do 10 of the Trinas. If we click on there now, you can see we're all right. We're up to 555-ish volts at the -7. Let's see if it'll let us have 14 or if that pushes it over. So 14 just squeezes in. So we're just under the 16. If we take that up to 15 panels, we're now over. So if we drop it back to 14 at -8 degrees Celsius, which to be fair is probably going to be as cold and bright as you'll see in the UK. 14 is your limit with the JA Solars. You might want to drop it back to 13, depends how you see it. So with that, we can string up another 14 in this variety. And then a final string here. And this is where you get your flexibility. Because obviously this last string's only got 12 panels in. So if we pinch a panel off one of them, we can drop 2 of the strings down to 13 volts and we're left one with 14. Now where that's useful is on a domestic dwelling. Typically is what you tend to find is you can get roughly 12 panels each side on your atypical detached dwelling, 4-bedroomed-ish, and that's 2 rows of 6 panels each side. So one PV Ultra 4-core 6mm would do you with your JA Solars. If you were using Trinas, because that's 24 panels in total, you would need 3 strings rather than 2. So you're running more cabling up to the roof for the same amount of generation. So there's all these other things that come into the equation in terms of efficiency and cost when you look at it at that level. Because the Trinas might outperform the JA Solars by say 5 or 10 units a year. I'm not saying they do, but they might do. But you've got another maybe 30 meters of PV Ultra SWA cable or 6mm solar cable running up to the roof that you've put in at the time of install. The cost of that, the raw materials of that, makes that payback calculation, as much as I hate the payback calculation, really swing out anyway. So sometimes having panels that can result in less strings can be more beneficial than using panels that have more strings, depending on your overall layout. And as we've seen there with the JA Solars, getting all these brands mixed up now, we could have 14 panels on each side. So if you've got an east-west split, 14 this side, 14 this side, one PV Ultra cable does the lot into 2 MPPTs on your inverter, which leaves some space free if you want to put solar on a carport or a garage roof or a shed or another flat roof or an extension of something you add in the future. Whereas for the same with the Trina solar panels, you're taking up 3 MPPTs, which is the cabling up there, and less resource in the inverter for other things. So that is where your design can really come to play a part. There's pros and cons in each direction, the cost of the panels, the performance of them when they start generating, their efficiency, which ones are better in low light, which ones are better in higher temperatures, lower temperatures. And all of that is where a good installer will design something to your budget that works best for you. And we tend to stick to the Trina Solar panel as our staple one because of its high startup voltage and the fact usually people are under 20 panels, so we're on a couple of strings anyway, and the cost of them. And then the JA Solars come in with slightly larger arrays where we're trying to limit the MPPTs a bit. And then the ICOs are more expensive and some customers just like the aesthetic look of them. I've had a few requests for them, so we do use those on occasion as well. So I hope that's a little interesting look at the actual design. And you can see here now, if we scroll down, we've still got a little warning on our inverter. So the minimum array VMP is below the minimum inverter input DC voltage. Please consider increasing the number of panels in the strings to between 2 and 14. So that's because we've got this string 0 sat on there. So if we get rid of that one, that clears that fault away if you were wondering. We can then choose our batteries, add in as many as you want. We can put the costing on the project as well and any other extras that you might have in terms of a gateway and stuff. So these all live in the realms of like EV charger. Say we want to add a 25 kilowatt EV charger, the DC variety we can. If we want to add a gateway, all of this gets put in there as well, just in case you're wondering as a consumer how all of this is put together. Your comms mods in there as well, your PV Ultra cable, your tigo optimizers. Let's just choose one of those. And then if we scroll through to the price, we can do it on a price per watt basis. This is just a system generated figure, so we assume it's going to cost that. It's not right, but we'll assume it does. We save our changes, and then it runs through to generate the actual proposal. And again, I've not input any details in terms of an energy tariff that the customer's already on. This is us. To be fair, I don't know what our energy tariff is, but I do know they charge us £10 a day standing charge, which is absolutely scandalous for the amount of energy we use. But yeah, then you can see your proposal, which kind of maps the system, gives you all the kit you're using, shows you what solar you'll generate as an anticipated volume, and you can see from those panels we've got an estimated annual output of 13,104. We'll go and swap them back to some Trinas and see if that changes in the software. So 13,104, you guys remember it because I will forget it, and then you get your payback period. We've not really inserted any tariffs on this, so it's not producing that figure, so it's not showing it. But if we go back to the design, let's change the panels. 13,104, keep that in your minds. Let's swing these back to the Trinas if I can find them. I'll just type it in, be a bit faster. And we'll choose those ones, get them popped back into the system. They're the 440s. Let's see if we can find the 450s. For a comparable one, because they were the JA 450s, it's only fair. Oh, where are they gone? That's annoying. Very annoying. Trina TSM 450. See if that pops it up. Fingers crossed. It's not doing. That is so annoying. I don't know where they've gone. Now we've got to scroll right to the end for the 450s. It's so annoying. Right, 450, 27, these ones. Right, so we've got those back in now. We need to restring them. I'll try and just do this faster way. Let's just take a few of these off. I'll just start again. It's going to be easier. Right, so we've got those Trinas back. Let's restring them into strings of 10. And then we know we're good on those MPPT ratings. And then we'll see, it's 13,104. I've still managed not to forget. Let's get them in there. save it, make sure everything's happy with itself, and then we'll go back to the PDF proposal and see what figure it gives us in terms of generation for the Trinas. It should be pretty much the same, but we'll see what the software says. There is sometimes a subtle difference. Let's have a little look. If we scroll down to the anticipated generation, now it's 13,104, so it's exactly the same what it's expecting. And it has swapped it over to them, you can see there. So it's based on the panel power. They will perform differently in the real world. This is just an educated guess that software and designers will make, and it's one of the reasons I really hate the return on investment calculations that people use. And yeah, you can see the savings it's expecting us to make in there as well. So that's kind of the design software. I hope that was an interesting little look at it. You can scale the picture, so when you go to produce your proposal to the customer, it looks different. And we're going to have a few more panels on this roof. You can see here that's 40 panels, and it's taking up about a third of it. So we're going to put 100 up there when we open this space, which is going to be useful generation and a way to try and recoup some of the £10 a day standing charge. Powering lots of the rest of the estate, you'll see there. If we zoom right out, this is a big old industrial estate, and there's lots of people using huge amounts of power up here, which is why the DNA were very keen to allow me to export as much power as I wanted. I think there's only a couple of other units with PV on them at the moment as well. So we're in a lucky position, and we're going to grab as much of that as we can while we can. Let's move on with the video.
Up on the roof, the guys have done an incredible job as always with an unusual tile shape, Redland deltas. Using Van der Voorcase mounting, Trina bifacial 450-watt solar panels. Tigo optimizers for shading, pest fix bird guard and PV Ultra DC cabling. The result is another great roof space set to generate power from sunshine for years to come. Nathan's camera skills less brilliant LOL.
So I hope you've enjoyed a look through another solar PV system with a bit of a focus this time towards the kind of design considerations and some of the stuff we need to be doing. If you've got any questions, as always, drop them in alongside this video. If you're a customer looking for a system in your home, we've got a range of installation examples through the YouTube channel. Please do go off and check some more of those out. Otherwise, there's a link in the description wherever you're watching this to go over to our website, fill in the contact form and get in touch with us. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.